Good evening, everyone. Have we had a chance to look over fully the minutes? Give it a second. You had something to add to the, okay. Yes.
Yeah, I just had a couple corrections, just one page, the second page. Charlie said the task force should create a top 10 list and then make the hard rank from that list actually with the remaining projects. That's all. From that list? No, what you just add. That's because I just I wrote it in. Okay, and then on page 3, I think it was actually Mike that said he ranked this project higher because of the crime issues in the area. Pretty sure.
Was Mike on the phone?
No, that Martin was on the phone. Maybe it was Marty. It's okay.
We can just check that one piece.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think just checking that was fine.
Thank you.
If there are, I'll give it a few more seconds, but
So I just have a question on how this is laid out. Some of them have footnote summaries, some of them just have consensus. So the consensus was spoken, the footnote summary was just a comment? Was,
The footnotes were not clarified, we just got the summary of what you guys will be presenting.
got it.
As the footnote, and then certain ones we just focused on consensus, not those.
Okay, but it's not, the footnote summaries aren't present for all of them, it's just some of them, just because,
The minutes are basically the flash points, the most important part
got it, okay,
of the conversation.
okay,
So the consensus was a little bit more important than footnotes.
okay,
The footnote wasn't really specified as much.
okay. Okay. So if I'm on page 7, so the description of these is almost, somebody brought up the point that the description doesn't really tell it what it is. So like there's no RS number or PTR number. So when it says Tabor Street and Youngfield Street, I'm having a hard time figuring out where I'm talking about. Okay, it's a power line number. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I went through and added that information in these news sheets.
Okay.
They have the more specific streets. Is that what you're?
So I'm looking at the
Right.
meeting minutes, if this,
Okay.
does the council look at these?
I-
Anybody look at these?
I don't know.
Never mind. Well, I'm just saying that,
if it would be good for clarification, I think that we can agree to.
because I remember reading them out,
Oh, I see
writing
what
them
you're
down.
saying.
You see what I'm saying?
You're saying the specific ones that needed more information.
No, just so it says, in the title, it says Tabor Street and Youngfield Street on 7.
I see what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying? So if it could say PL number 2, or, yeah. I'm assuming it's PL number 2. See how I'm assuming? Because that's the only one that says Tabor and Youngfield. It would just be good to have the referencing number next to them, if possible. Okay. I would request. I mean, some of them are obvious, but other ones are like,
Other than that, adding the clarifications for the project numbers, your statement clarification. Can we approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of June 2nd, 2016 with the changes that Charlie Myers made and the requested by Ann to assign the project number in front of the title, the bolded title in the meeting minutes for clearer definition.
I second the motion.
Motion passed.
Oh,
No.
we got to vote.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Let's try that again. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Then the motion is passed. Yes. There we go. Eventually I will remember that whole voting thing. Minutes are approved, and now to the next part, the city council presentation, which are the comments, majority of it. Anne,
We have them?
the comments,
Okay.
I have a copy. Would you like to look over them?
I can look at them on my phone. I didn't print them. I didn't think of printing them. I thought that they'd be ready, sorry. Sorry. I nicely formatted it.
Yes, Anne, you did do a wonderful job if you did that part.
And guess what it's in?
Excel?
Yeah.
It's in Excel. Nice.
Oh, awesome.
We all have our points. Any general comments about the presentation?
No, I had a question if we had a specific time allotment for council. Is there,
So what do we need to know? We need to know time. We need to know, I'm assuming, let's find out, but I'm assuming staff is just gonna do some, like they usually do, some little intro, yeah?
Carly can actually clarify that.
Okay, so let's figure out what the process of the presentation is.
So clarify.
And it's gonna be in their packet, right? Their study session packet?
There's gonna be an outline of what's going to happen that day, but I believe you guys are gonna be during the council meeting after staff works, so I'm not sure when that's set up.
Okay, we'll just wait. Because that's important.
yeah,
So, is it gonna be study session or council meeting?
It's a council meeting, but it'll be a study session break that you guys are presenting.
Okay, so will they have it in their packet?
Yes.
They'll have,
Whatever you guys need me today. So I was going to do the comment page, the project list, and then the top 10 projects with the categories. And then just kind of with a cover with also any recommendations that you guys decide on today or via email before tomorrow.
so, are you guys okay including these? I thought these were gonna be speaking points.
I can do whatever you'd like.
I also thought they were speaking points just because when everything is spelled out already, it makes a presentation seem a little redundant.
So who opens it up? Who opens the, you are gonna open it?
Whatever you'd like. I actually won't be there. Heather will. But yeah, it's up to you guys. It's kind of your presentation. So
So Heather does the intro and gives the background on dirt, yes?
if you'd like her to, sure.
I think we should have her. give a background on dirt, because some of the city council people may not have been around 7 years ago. So just a little intro on dirt, maybe explain how many were in the first prior review in 2007? Yeah, the former group, so that, let's say they had 20, and then she can say, and this time, those 20, if applicable, were brought up and prioritized and presented with another, another 8? They added another 8 or something? And then they'll have it in their packet, so presumably, most of them read their packet ahead of time, sorry. And then they can ask us questions? Or they'll introduce Ruth?
Like I said, it's really up to you, so you guys can talk about it.
So, I mean, the options are, we ourselves can give the intro, but I think having someone a little bit more neutral might be a better idea. So having Heather do an intro, like you suggested, outlining what we had to do, and then,
Okay.
Yeah.
what's this? So, history of dirt. Then she says, we accepted applications.
sorry, I was laughing at dirt. I'm sorry, the history of dirt, sorry.
History of dirt, we accepted, it was decided by the city council, somebody decided on city council, right?
Right, so we'll give the full background of what brought this task force together and what you guys were tasked with and the purpose.
The team, the actual team, we need to announce the team.
Right.
Ruth and Jesse being chair and co-chair, and then by district. And then it might be, and then as in the last time, staff presented to the dirt committee. Are we a committee or task force?
Task force.
I kept saying committee, apologies. He presented each of the new or existing,
Projects, yeah.
yep, and answered any questions.
So just a clarification of the process, how the staff,
And we met for boom, 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 boom times.
hopefully you're not saying those exact words.
And then ask for any questions. Because let's assume they read, I do not want to go verbatim
No.
and say, project number 1, project number 2, this is that, we don't have time for that, but we'll just say, you have our priority list in front of you. We're happy to answer any questions about that.
But you were gonna present the comments that you have on each
We
project?
can, but I don't think, should we?
Well,
I
if we
would
don't,
think so, yeah.
if we
If you're not gonna give this in the
If we
packet.
do not give the comments, then we need to say all the comments. If we give the comments, we do not have to say all the comments. But I'm more than willing, yes,
I was just gonna say, I think you did a good job, Ann. I mean, quite frankly, I'd almost put the comments in the packet. And then if you wanna talk to them or not, you're covered, because it comes down to a time allotment. But
That's
I mean,
true.
you did a
That's
very
what-
good job, and
I
I
mean,
think
I'm
the
looking
comments.
at this, and this is 10 to 15 minutes spoken,
Yeah.
minimum.
Yeah. But I mean, you did such a good job that I mean, there's nothing to be, nervous about, just I put it in the packet.
I'm not nervous, I just,
Okay.
that's fine, I'm fine putting them in there,
I mean, this is a suggestion.
yeah, I'm fine.
I agree, because I think there's enough information in there that they're not gonna absorb it running through the list. You give it to them in the packet, they've got it written down, and, they can read it and think about it and refer back to it if they so choose.
I think it's, yeah, I agree. I think it's important to be in the packet written, because some of these justifications or caveats really need to go along with the ranking. It explains so well why maybe there's a low ranking where we all, with, the drainage projects had to be explained, some of that. So I
Plus,
think it
then
is
they can-
important to
then
be.
they can use it as reference material.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
So I've already found an error. I've already found an error on, I didn't include number 3, storm sewer number 3 in any numbers. So I'm gonna have to clean this up a little bit. I can add Charlie's. I have to add number 3 in there. Oh, that's right, or whatever, yeah. But I think I need to clean this up if we're just gonna hand it out, which I'm fine. I just realized I missed it.
Isn't that one you're just talking about covered
Yeah, I think that's
in
just
the,
a typo that you need to add
just a
the
typo.
number.
I think it's just a typo.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So clarify, okay.
It needs to be storm sewer number 3, 10, 12, and 16.
Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4?
No, storm sewer, not power line.
Storm sewer, right. Ah, yes.
Okay.
Erroneous mistake.
And I need to expand the last line because it chopped off the last sentence.
I don't,
It says that 1 or 2 of the members should participate to provide continuity, something like that. That's what I wrote.
That's right. From the previous committee participants for continuity.
Yeah.
I'll have to get rid of that extra space, yeah.
That came from my,
No, this can
Yeah,
be-
I just need to shrink them. I can shrink the headers and the, yeah. And then if we're gonna hand this out, sorry, if we're gonna get technical about this, I hate handing out stuff that doesn't have a reference point, so we need to put the task force, the year, the presentation, all that stuff. I'll put it, shrink the font, they can squint.
Oh, no, I think you're gonna have to have 2 pages, the horror.
I can shrink the font, they can squint.
Yes, but I think that for
Pages. Or front and back, that's fine, okay,
front and back is still better.
okay, I can do that.
Let's
I
not
will
shrink
get
it.
I will get it to you. I'll just clean it up. Sorry about that.
So clarify, formalizing your comments.
What about Charlie's comment?
And Charlie's comment for the ADA.
well, is everyone okay with that?
I personally think it's something that needs to be added for more clarity on that project. I agree that it should be. Everyone else?
Yeah, I agree.
Consensus? Okay.
Somebody else had a comment too.
Yes. Who else did? Was it on the email?
Yes, here I am. Michael.
I think he was clarifying the
Be
Tabor.
clarified more accurately. Was it?
The same thing you needed clarification on, the projects.
Oh, I think you guys did that.
Yeah, so that was where I added, that's what I was talking about before, yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, Charlie, so you said the task force was concerned by the low ranking for the ADA transition plan as it does not reflect the importance of addressing the access needs of Wheat Ridge's disabled population that includes many seniors and disabled veterans. A misperception of a very low number of residents needing these accommodations on the initial ranking caused an overall low ranking. Since this project relates to American Disabilities Act statutes, okay, that require modifications to streets and sidewalks to ensure access by persons with disabilities, some task force member questioned why it was on the DIRT task force list of projects and not incorporated in the scheduled implementation plan, in a scheduled implementation. Okay, but now where do I want to include other task force members, or do we want to include other task force members took this as universal accessibilities for, I mean, do we want to include, or we just want to stick with ADA?
I'm fine with also adding universal. The only thing is ADA does really relate to the disabled population. But I think you're right, Terry, it is a larger population when you bring in universal access. But as far as this project, I don't know, it seems limited to ADA.
I think we could probably add, we see the universal applications for it, value, the universal value,
Yeah.
which includes your comment, Terry. Does that work?
ADA does have the statutes behind it, but I think most groups are going toward universal access.
Okay. Yeah, this is the one I kind of struggled with. Okay, I got it. So do we need a consensus or?
Can we have a consensus on that, the wording and the addition to that? And if,
Yes.
a consensus is a nodding of head. A formal vote is all in approval of the wording and the addition, say aye. All those, yeah. I think a consensus can work. Yes, Terry? Consensus, okay. General consensus. Yes.
I was just gonna say, kind of going back to the actual presentation, I definitely think Heather could provide the background as far as dirt history, but I think there would be some value in you guys talking about this particular dirt task force and who was on it, what your experience was, what you were tasked with, and what the layout of it was. I think that would probably work best coming from you guys. Of course, we can work with whatever you'd prefer, but I just think that makes probably sense, especially if you're not having to present all of this and you're just kind of going to be available for questions.
I agree with that statement. If I, myself, or Anne presents that part, the team, the meetings, what we had staff do, I think that might work better.
Yep, so we can script it.
Yes.
So we follow the script. Pretty simple. Between now and Monday.
Yes.
Okay.
Were there any other recommendations as a group that we wanted to bring forward besides the other,
Participation recommendation?
the having a continuation of the dirt task force, if they're going to rely on these kind of lists, having them happen a little more frequently. But were there any other recommendations? Like, did we actually come to a consensus of the group if we wanted to say that a lot of these projects would work better if they implemented them as sunset tax, or do we feel we have to do that?
No. Our job is not to figure out how to pay for it.
Agreed.
And I would really want to avoid going down that.
Just clarifying, just wanted to make sure that we didn't want to add that in.
So what else though? To your point,
Yeah,
what are the recommendations based on this process? We're not going to do a debrief, but I mean, based on this process, do you think we can recommend the city council do? I mean, is 4 years appropriate? Did we say 4 years? Yeah, 4 years appropriate?
I think it should be sooner. I would think every 2 years.
Every 2 years?
I also think one of the things that, obviously, like we said, we don't want to get into the economics, but, and I think, Ruth, you kind of broached it to begin with, and we started with like 10, we've dropped down to 9, but there may be another criteria that needs to be added, or that needs to be discussed in
How
the
about
future.
how about the criteria reviewed?
Yeah, criteria
As part
reviewed
of
and,
each-
and basically adjusted to the time that's reviewed, or however you want to say that. Criteria change through time, and I think you need to either adjust it, add it, or I would say probably explain it a little bit. And I think Ruth, somebody had that comment to begin with, is that everybody's going to look at, whether it's, economics or accessibility and that there, and what does it mean? Maybe a little bit better definition that there at the begin with, and then just look at the criteria, define it a little bit, which helps people vote on it, and then maybe put some another 1 or 2 criteria or something like that. But every 2 years, I think 4 years is too long.
I kind of agree. If they are going to rely very heavily on this process, this list of projects, then waiting 10 years between review of the list might be a bit, especially if they're going to make it a citizen task force.
I think that every 4 to 5 years is probably a good time window. Going back to our first presentation in the budget, the slice of the city budget for these projects is fairly small. So,
You don't see much movement in 2 years?
exactly. You know, I think in 4 or 5 years, things can have shifted, but every 2 years, you know, I'm thinking the number of projects that would go off this list would be minimal.
For clarification, you're saying that we should recommend 4 or 5 years instead of every 2 years.
Correct.
Ann?
So here's my opinion. I think it takes a lot to spin this group up. I mean, with city staff
Right.
and setting them aside to come to these meetings. I see the benefit of doing it every 2 years, but maybe maybe there's 2 years on and 2 years off. So maybe 2 years, maybe it's more passive, where they reach out to the previous members, the existing members, and say, hey, we have these new projects come up, and maybe we do everything online or something like that. Or we just set aside the passive and we just sit to 4 years. But it takes a lot to spin this little machine up, and go through the applications. First of all, get the word out, go through the applications.
Right.
City council and staff have to make up their recommendations, and they have to put something in this. I don't disagree that 2 years seems like it's more proactive, but I'm not sure if they're staffed to spin this up more than every 4 years.
Thank you for that comment. Charles?
Well, Carly, what's the budget planning cycle in city? Do you do it for a 4-year period, or generally what?
So it is an annual budget, so it is every year, so it's not biannual. But as far as like CIP planning, we always have at least 5 years, and then we forecast further ahead. But 5 years is probably pretty good.
I would think reflecting the city planning on the CIP projects, or maybe maybe 4 to 5 might be better. I don't know.
Or we come back around full circle to every 4 years as a slightly happy medium. We could even suggest every 3 years to bump it up to a little sooner, but I think recommending between 3 to 4 years, that is a good recommendation. Instead of, that way then we're not setting anything, we're just recommending that having this task force meet every 3 to 4 years with a previous member or 2 on the task force would be good. Yes.
Just a question. City council, they have 4-year terms or 2-year terms?
4.
And they're offset, correct? Or are they all on the same?
They're offset.
So if we do every 4 years, we'll definitely catch all. If we do every 4, there's an overlap. I'm trying to figure out,
Right.
make sure that there was an overlap of city council, not only city council, but okay, thank you.
So I would like to clarify that this is what we would like to recommend to City Council, that every 4 years, they have this task force happen again with 1 or 2 previous members. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can we have a consensus that that is what we want to recommend? Consensus, thank you.
Of the, and that the criteria is reviewed and adjusted?
We didn't get to that
Oh,
part.
we didn't get there,
Yeah.
okay, good.
That was the next part.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing it up. So the next part is listening from that comment is that should we also recommend the review of the criteria? Tony?
Yes, I think it's well put. I think a review of the criteria and adjustments accordingly.
So the other recommendation is that they review the criteria every 4 years also for clarification, as Tony said. General consensus? I agree, I like this.
Here's what I'm writing down.
Yes.
As part of the task force mandate, they review the criteria and adjust accordingly. Yep. Based on changing something. Nah.
Based on additional, based on updated information.
Yep. Good, thank you.
Are there any other recommendations?
I recommend that Carly does it every year.
Hey,
Hey.
I think that's a wonderful idea, and we should recommend Carly forever because she will never leave this city and she will work forever. No.
In seriousness, do we have any issues with the number of criteria or the specificity of the criteria or the presentations that were given to us? I mean, is there anything that we want to give feedback to staff as well as the city council with regards to how the task force, not our debrief internally, but how it worked? I mean, I love this book, by the way.
Yeah, the book was excellent. It was a great reference.
Yeah. I think this was the right number of,
I agree. It was a good number of projects. I think the number of criteria and diversity was good. The one thing that I would add is that, as we discussed, there needed to be one category for kind of other benefits, because there was a number of projects that we felt provided other benefits, but there was no category that applied.
I agree with you. I think that having one other criteria that could encompass more, just because I feel that a lot of these projects, although they were brought over from the last time, I think some of the reasons why they didn't rank as high is because they don't fall under all of the criteria highly, as we all discussed last time. So, although I loved the packet, I loved the book was very informative. The descriptions of the criteria were not that clear all the time. But I believe that might have come from the last task force, not necessarily bad translation. But recommendations, I did feel like there was a lack of focus on the environmental side. I know it was a new criteria for the city. They just added that, I think this year, was it? No, the city added that part to their little fun list. It was in the first meeting, I forgot what it was called. But I think that it might just be because it was so new to the city and the city staff that it just didn't really have time to say, these are environmental stuff. Here, have it. I'm not sure if that was an issue for anybody else.
I'm big environmental sustainability fan, but I believe in broader sustainability, so economic sustainability, There's a bunch of different sustainabilities that fall under that umbrella, that it's just not environmental, but a lot of them were captured under, with the economic and with the aesthetics and stuff like that. So,
To clarify, I didn't actually mean the criteria, I meant like the presentations from staff, and I was just wondering if everybody, like, it was just not enough time for the staff to really get in-depth in some of those,
I get it, okay.
to explain how these projects could really hit all that umbrellaed environmental. So possibly giving staff more time to do the research for some of these projects and how they could get these criteria might have been better for the presentation of the projects, not necessarily the criteria, just
I get it.
for the staff benefit.
So
yeah.
the fact that we're asking for it every 4 years will be on their no, it'll be on their calendar, and they'll know ahead of time, instead of city council just saying, hey, we want to spin dirt task force up again, which spins all the staff having to prepare and dig everything through. If you know 4 years from now that the dirt task force is going to stand up in 2020, in June of 2020, you can back up from that and say, okay, we need to start planning in January and pull together our projects and have our presentations and everything to address your point. So I think that addresses it by asking them to have it every 4 years.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because we were, like on the drainage projects, we were asking some questions that sounded like they'd have to go back and really do some digging. But with what you mentioned, if it's a routine, they will collect that data, and it'd be good justification for ranking them higher, maybe. Yeah, so I think that'd be good.
Does city staff know what our criteria is before they present the projects?
So yeah, they did in this case. They were aware, but I agree with what the group is saying, that if there was a criteria that they had ahead of time and they could kind of work towards that and kind of build a presentation around it, I think it would be a little more connected.
They can lobby.
I agree, and having it every 4 years hits that on the head. I think that's the same. Besides making, sorry, just,
It was a great benefit to have them come and present to us, and, we really appreciate them taking the time to do that.
oh, completely. I think that we'd still be spinning our wheels if we hadn't all agreed to hear from the project managers and the department managers. Yes, that's the word I wanted. But besides creating a full script and a more formalized presentation for city council, are there any other topics? Yes?
Well, just on process, going back to how we got through all this and got our ranking, and by the way, the top 10 list and then the priorities by category, that was, I thought, really helpful. How about any others that like that way to see it? In fact, as I think we talked about, that might be a good way to handle our ranking, kind of within the categories. I mean, it worked out the other way, but one thing on the, as we got into the ranking, I guess I was a little surprised that we would go with the hard ranking. On our first go with ranking, that became the ranking, that we went with hard ranking on that as opposed to kind of consensus development. And maybe that it would have been too difficult. We'd be here for another couple months if we were going to do consensus on it, on everyone, and people would be lobbying for certain projects. So I think the hard ranking was probably certainly the way to go. And you mentioned that in the earlier group, the first group, you did hard ranking. I guess I was a little surprised on the first go go-round, that was our ranking, on our first one.
Tony and I were talking about that on the way in. Although the process, I think, was a little bit uncomfortable for all of us at certain points, I think it ended up with a fairly good numerical ranking, and I suspect that no matter how many times we reconfigured or discussed, that the rankings would be fairly close. So, I think it was a good way to do it.
Tony?
Yeah, and I think, I agree with you. I think it worked out. And what I really liked, I think how it almost like they got to a sticking point, shall we say, and then it kind of, in loggerheads, basically, and then it kind of broke with the idea of having comments. And I actually think the idea of comments, as we went through that last time, I think that meeting last time was very productive. And I just liked whoever came up with the idea of comments, and I don't know if it was you, Ann, or somebody, I thought that was pretty good. And I think that really helped out. But I think in the end, the process worked. I mean, it was could have been a little bit more efficient, but I think it's because we haven't worked together as a group before. And I think we got a little sidetracked, and I'm as guilty as anybody on that, on things that probably weren't as important that should have been discussed. But when we got that last meeting, when we went through and we did the comments and that there, I thought that was really productive, and I think it worked pretty good.
So, doing the hard ranking and doing the poll online, the polling everything online, do you think it had benefit to doing it at home by yourself and not in the group? Because, Tony?
At first, I kind of, I like the interaction in the group. I mean, I think everybody brought, especially Ann, who's been through this process way back when. And I think it brought a lot of information, into the discussions, now whether, and I just felt it was worthwhile. I mean, the online thing I think is good in some ways, but I got more out of it by just the discussions.
I think doing it online like that forms the basis for the discussion.
I think that having the whole ranking of all of them was beneficial, but I do think that ranking them by category might have been a little bit more helpful instead of taking the ranks in the Excel sheet and then making the categories. I think that if we had come to a consensus a little sooner, ranking them by category might have been helpful, but it definitely might be helpful for future task force. I think how we got to where we went was pretty okay. Yes, Ann.
So, I'm just thinking like city council here. So they have to prioritize between all these different functions, all these different groups within the city. And if we had handed them priorities by category, while we had given them what our priorities were for roadway and streetscape, we wouldn't have told them that we believe that land banking was more important than, I don't know, something else, than the rec center. They really wouldn't have seen that. So I like the hard ranking just because it does, as Terry said, sets the precedence of what we're talking about. And then people can say, well, I voted that at the bottom and here's why, and then we could chat about it. But I like the hard ranking just because it set the point, the where we were going to start discussing. And then remember, we're presenting this to city council. We're also presenting to staff, but city council needs to see where we as citizens representing our districts feel these should be positioned. And by giving it by priorities, while it's nice for the staff to see, oh, okay, they think these should go first and second, third, I like the hard ranking. I guess I'm wired that way a little bit more. But
I agree 100%, and I think that one of the benefits for city council is that we compare and contrast between the divisions. because that's really where the value judgment comes in, and I think that's what they're looking for, is just a snapshot of how the public is viewing the priorities. You know, the storm sewer and the power line undergrounding, I basically kept the staff's ranking that they gave us on those, because I feel that they're more intimate with the projects and they already know, you know, between Storm Sewer Project 1 and Storm Sewer Project 2, the severity of the problem. And, you know, they're intelligent people, so I think how that compares to parks and trails and roadways is the important information that we're giving to City Council.
I agree and disagree with both of you. So I see the benefits of just doing the hard ranking, and I see the benefits of ranking by category. But I do agree that presenting to City Council, you should only give the total list, just because it's kind of what you've been asked to do, is to do a hard ranking of all of the tasks. My comment is really towards maybe a future task force. So it would be, would it be better to do a hard ranking at the beginning when you're first introduced to to all the projects, and then a hard ranking at the end after you've had your discussion? Because there is a consensus that the talking amongst ourselves, the comments are very helpful, and kind of, they did influence some people on their ranking. I mean, so I see benefits from both sides, and I'd rather just make a recommendation that hard ranking at the beginning would have been helpful, and hard ranking at the end after talking through all the projects might have been a little bit more helpful, might have moved the process a little faster, maybe, possibly, could have done that. It's just a comment. I don't know if we have to add that to City Council or the presentation.
I think that's more internal, I think, but I really want to be clear. I never considered fudging the scores to raise something artificially, because I didn't want that to
I think you have
Somebody-
made that
yeah.
very clear, and I think we have all understood the premise on that, and I don't think anyone was actually suggesting fudging them. I think that it was more along the lines that allowing certain people to adjust their rankings, not artificially, but more along the lines of they think certain projects
learned
moved up.
something.
They
They
learned
learned
something new,
Yeah.
they changed their opinions on something, and so, I mean,
yeah.
no one was suggesting, and you have to change it because it's for the greater fudge. No, that is definitely not, and I think I appreciated your stance on it. It was,
Well, my point was, if we had had a lot of discussion, first of all, I think there might have been some artificial fudging. I like the fact that we did a test run of the first three or whatever. Remember we did a test run of the first three to kind of dip our toe, and we saw how it worked and everybody's numbers, et cetera. I just think it opens it up to starting to fudge the numbers if you have discussions. But I think everybody, for the most part, I heard some cases where people would fudge their answers based on personal belief or what they heard versus the actual criteria, but you're all going to do that. It's human nature, even me.
I would disagree on that comment. It wasn't fudging it. It was taking into account you as a citizen, taking into account your knowledge of the city, taking into account the new information you gained from the process, and doing your vote. I don't think it was fudging it per se. I think it was ranking it how you felt. I mean, you can say a lot of things are fudged, but I don't think that was how a majority of us got to our ranks. Charles? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
Oh, sorry. One question on the technical aspect of it. I know we agreed to the Excel spreadsheet where we could see the rank, as we did them, the ranking of all 23. How do you compare that within the SurveyMonkey, where we were just doing the individual one according to the criteria? Do you think that worked? Which one do you like? And it worked in the end, but which one would you rather go with?
Here's, don't, you're gonna hate me. Here's what I would love. As you're ranking them, it moves them in the list.
You,
That would be cool. So if you had all 23, and as you rank them individually, it would just go, okay, this is now here, and this is now here, and this is in your
So,
own list.
if we wanted to talk about fudging, if we really want to talk about fudging, being able to see that and then putting in new numbers like, oh, then this one will move here and it's amazing.
Well, that's exactly right.
And that moves on to the realm of fudging and artificially changing your. It would be cool, but that's why I liked this. That's why I liked the SurveyMonkey better. I thought that it made you think more about the criteria than it did about the numbers. I see the benefit of using the Excel. I just think that thinking about the criteria more than the score was better.
You know, the one reason that I disagree with that a little bit is that I think when you begin ranking, that you change internally your ranking as you go along. So it's not that you're trying to fudge it or change projects. I think that you see, you know, once you've seen the whole ranking laid out before you, then you go back and you reevaluate in terms of that. And, you know, not trying to artificially, but, you know, I saw in my rankings, one of the things I noticed is that I ranked them very narrowly in terms of numerical value. And I think I would have, you know, if I went through and ranked them again, I would have spread that out.
So you stayed in the pack?
I stayed in a pack. Yeah, my rankings were a tight pack.
Tony?
Well, the other thing I was going to say is that it sounds like, in general, is basically if you get all the information up front and whoever you need to pull in to explain each one of these projects to whatever group at the time that the next one convenes, is then you just basically at the end is when you basically rank them. I mean, you can do some trials internally, but it's like anything else. You need information in order to rank them. I think maybe we might have been a little premature when we started to rank, and then we were still getting people to give input, and whether you want to call it fudging or adjusting or however you want to look at it, but it's like anything else. You need to have as much information in the amount of time that you have to do your task, and then you basically rank it, and that's it. That's the end of it,
Carly, how about you? Which one did you like better?
They were both good. They were fine. I do think there's probably, with more time and kind of thinking through it as a group a little bit more, ways that we might have been able to figure out how to rank in a more dynamic way. Not exactly what Anne's referring to, but maybe something similar. Or I know we talked a little bit about the clicker voting. I think there could be a use for that. If you had more time for conversation and kind of discussion purposes. It's just with the short timeline that you guys were working with, it's hard to kind of get to in the weeds and all of that stuff. So
To that point, I did think that a month getting up to date on all the projects was not enough time. To get all the information and have discussion on them, I didn't think it was enough time. I think if we had been a little bit more informed before coming into the task force, it might have been just enough time. Sorry, Terry?
I think that if we had more time, we would have ended up in the same place that we did, and it would have just taken more time. I think doing it in a compressed way, we got to the same place.
I'd like to add too, is I think instead of having it every 10 years or 7 years, by going to 4 years, you'll kind of, they'll help that process because it'll still be fresh somewhere in 4 years' time. So I think that'll help the process too. But I agree with Terry's. I think that sometimes it's like the old adage where you're given an amount of time and you're given a task, and the task will fill up that amount of time, and whether it's a long amount of time or it's short, who knows what the optimum time frame to do it, but I think in the end, it worked out reasonably well.
To that point, if they have it every 4 years, then yes, to both of your points, then yes. If you have it every 4 years, it's still a little fresh, thus it can fit in this time. 7 years, 10 years, that big of a gap, I still think that if we had been allowed to have, not allowed, just if we had, again, this meeting we're having right now could have been filled up just with the comments. So I agree though, yeah, you have a task, it will fill up the amount of time you give it. Ann?
There's a George Carlin skit on that, by the way, about stuff. Just saying.
But I think that writing up the script for the city council, which can be done with staff, I do not see anything else we need to discuss at this moment. And I think that we are pretty much officially finished with the task force. Is anyone, mission accomplished, does anyone disagree with that? And
So when do you want these notes? Can I get them to you?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Yeah.
Yeah.
When does the packet go out?
Yeah.
Tomorrow? Okay.
Really, the packet stuff is due on Friday before, so it was due last Friday. But since this meeting was happening, we can push it off till Wednesday, but then it has to be delivered
Yeah.
like Thursday morning.
But if I go home and update it?
Right.
Okay.
in that case, I think that we have accomplished everything we set out to accomplish, and we are finished. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.